A criminal and a monster and all that, and especially, but I'm about to make you a hero. This Bella Vista and all that, because it's going to solve this case for you.
Welcome or welcome back, and thanks for being here. I'm Cassie, and this is A Wicked World. The story I have for you today is one that's similar to the Dakota Collins case, and it's an absolutely appalling one. It's about a little boy who didn't know what love from his parents felt like, and he was tortured for most of that short life. This is the story of Isaiah Torres. Maurice, or Isaiah as he was called, Torres was born on July 3, 2008 to his parents Mauricio and Kathy Torres. Isaiah had 10 other siblings, including his twin sister. He was a fun and loving little boy who loved to help out others. His favorite color was orange. He loved Spider-Man and the movie Toy Story. He also wanted to be a police officer when he grew up, and his favorite foods were chicken and macaroni and cheese. Isaiah additionally loved wearing hats, singing, dancing, and telling knock-knock jokes. Little Isaiah and his two sisters, Madison and Mackenzie, would also volunteer at the Samaritan Community Center in Rogers, Arkansas. The director said that he and his sister came in each week to help put together snack packs. And little Isaiah, who was very helpful, loved breaking down boxes. Now, Isaiah's parents, Mauricio and Kathy, had met in Jonesboro, Arkansas, and got married in 2002. Mauricio had previously been married, and he lived in California. He had 2 children from this marriage, Mauricio Jr. and Erica. They both lived with their mother. And Kathy had 4 children from her previous marriage. Her children were named Nicholas, Bailey, Spencer, and Quentin. The couple then had 2 children together who would be removed from their custody before Mauricio and Kathy then went on to have a daughter and Isaiah and his twin sister. So there was a total of 11 children between the pair. On the afternoon of March 29, 2015, Isaiah's mother Kathy would call 911 to report that Isaiah was unresponsive. When the first responders arrived at the family's home on 9 Creswell Circle in Bella Vista, they found the little boy lying on the floor on his back. When they asked the couple what had happened, they explained that they had just returned home from a family camping trip. But they had no idea what was wrong with the little boy. However, as the paramedics placed 6-year-old Isaiah on the stretcher, they noticed that he had multiple bruises, lacerations, and puncture wounds. Therefore, police were contacted. Sadly, Isaiah would pass away shortly after he arrived at the hospital at 12:23 a.m. on March 30th, 2015. It was discovered that the 6-year-old had signs of blunt force trauma to his head and extremities. He had also developed a severe case of sepsis. This infection had occurred after an object had been shoved into Isaiah's rectum, an object that police would later find out was a large stick. They also discovered that Isaiah had 23 separate wounds to his head. He had teeth that had been knocked or pulled out, his nose was broken, and he had a bizarre diamond-shaped injury on his abdomen. The boy's father, Mauricio, would tell doctors that his injuries, at least the ones on his back, were from a chemical burn that had taken place months earlier, after Isaiah had fallen into a puddle of bleach in the bathroom. According to Mauricio, Isaiah had been treated for these injuries at a hospital, but doctors were unable to confirm this. Now, when a search was conducted of the Torres' home, police found blood spatter on the walls, floor, and ceiling of the master bedroom and the attached master bath. Blood spatter was also found on 15-pound dumbbells that were inside the bathroom. And in the bedroom, a fireplace poker tool that had a diamond shape on it, similar to the one that was found on Isaiah's body, was discovered. There was additionally vomit and a stethoscope found on the bed. Then, when the family's camper was searched, the one that they had just used on their recent camping trip, Detectives found a large circular blood stain on one of the mattresses. Between all of this and the fact that the parents did not show any emotional response when they were informed that Isaiah was dead, police brought Mauricio and Kathy down to the station for questioning. In Kathy's initial interview with detectives, she told them that the family had arrived home around 10 p.m. the previous day. And it was earlier, close to 2 p.m., that Isaiah had started to get a stomach ache. She had then, in turn, given him some Pepto-Bismol. According to her, Isaiah had been acting normal when they arrived back home. And he'd even taken a shower and put on his own pajamas. Kathy claimed that after the shower, she had left him sleeping in the master bedroom. But when she returned, just a moment later, Isaiah wasn't breathing, so she had contacted 911. The mother also denied any knowledge of Isaiah's injuries, instead suggesting that he was clumsy and often ran into doors. According to her, Isaiah had some dark circles under his eyes when they had returned back from their camping trip. She also tried to say that his nose wasn't broken, but rather it was always a little crooked, and she denied any wrongdoing. When authorities confronted Kathy with allegations of abuse, she stated that she loved her son and would never hurt him. According to Kathy, her and her husband never fought, and they rarely punished the kids at all. Now, Mauricio's story was much the same as Kathy's in regards to their camping trip, as well as little Isaiah's stomachache when they had returned back home. He said that they had given him medicine and made sure that he stayed hydrated. According to Mauricio, though, Isaiah had been very difficult to wake up in the car when they returned home. And he hadn't showered himself as Kathy had claimed, but rather he needed assistance. But when Mauricio had asked his wife Kathy if she thought they should bring the boy to the emergency room, she said no, because it was just a stomachache and it didn't warrant it. He also denied any knowledge of how Isaiah had obtained his injuries, saying that the little boy was just clumsy and maybe a virus had been the thing that killed him. He also stated that at one point, maybe Isaiah's injuries were due to negligence, but they had never been intentionally inflicted. Mauricio would even speculate to detectives that maybe his son had an undiagnosed condition like hypoglycemia or diabetes that could have been a factor in his death. He went on to tell detectives that his wife Kathy actually spent the most amount of time with Isaiah, but he knew that she would not hurt the children. Then he claimed that he was only guilty of one thing, which was his inability to save his son, and he had failed not only as a father, but as a man. Shortly after these statements were made, detectives took a break from interviewing Mauricio, and during this time, he grew increasingly anxious. Then, when they resumed their interview, Mauricio made multiple comments, insinuating that he thought Kathy had ratted him out or implicated him in hurting their son. So it wasn't very long after that the husband and wife began to turn on each other. And as they did, detectives began to uncover the horrifying truth about what had happened to Isaiah. Kathy had changed her story, and she was now telling detectives that she had previously seen her husband, Mauricio, hurt their son. According to her, he would beat him with his fists, extension cords, and a belt. She also admitted that on occasion, she had joined in with hitting Isaiah with this belt, but she didn't do it hard enough to hurt him. Isaiah's two sisters, who were just 6 and 7 at the time, were also brought in for questioning. And even though they told authorities that Mauricio had instructed them not to speak about Isaiah's death, they would confirm the camping story that their parents had told, with some major differences. One being that on the morning that Isaiah had died, one of his sisters had woken up to find him tied up in the bathtub by shoelaces. Apparently, Kathy and Mauricio were furious with Isaiah for eating a piece of cake. The sister also recalled their father taking Isaiah and dragging him into the camper later that day. Then he forced him to strip naked and beat him with a stick. Also, according to the girl, Isaiah had to sit down quite frequently during their trip as he was unwell. And by the time they had returned back home, Isaiah had to be carried in from the car. The little girl also told authorities that Isaiah was so out of it when they got home that the entire family had to help take his clothes off and shower him because he couldn't even stand up in the shower. After that, Kathy put on his pajamas, then gave him some gummy vitamins and green tea before putting him to bed. The little girl claimed that Isaiah was acting very strangely at this point. Then on April 7th, about a week after Isaiah's death, Mauricio, who was being held in jail on suspicion of murdering his son, requested to speak with the police captain. This came after he found out that his wife Kathy had filed an order of protection against him and was now blaming him for Isaiah's death. According to Kathy, she had not been with the family the entire day on the 29th, the day that 911 had been called. She claimed that around 2:30 p.m. she had gone to Lowe's and she was gone for a little under an hour. During that time, Mauricio had been left with the boy. Kathy then told a detective that she was scared of her husband Mauricio and that he had hurt Isaiah, which is why they were there. Now, when the detective went to speak with Mauricio, the very first thing that he would do was complain about his conditions in jail. He said that he needed more protein because he had just had a weight loss surgery, and he was cold because he didn't have a proper mattress. Boo-hoo. He then went on to describe his wife Kathy as being a very controlling person, who was just as responsible for Isaiah's death as he was. Though, according to Mauricio, his son's death was just an accident. While they were on their family trip, Mauricio claimed that Isaiah had eaten some cake, and this infuriated Kathy. So as punishment, he had forced a stick into Isaiah's rectum, then made him do squats as he and Kathy watched on. Mauricio even demonstrated what had happened to detectives. As the little boy was doing this, the parents decided that he wasn't moving fast enough for their sick pleasure, so Kathy forced him down on the stick even further. She then took the stick out and cleaned up. During Mauricio's confession to police, he laughed and claimed that his son looked so cute doing his squats, which is one of the sickest things I have ever heard. According to the father, the stick was something that they normally used to spank Isaiah with, because it was the only thing that he responded to, as the boy had anger issues, he claimed.
When you said that you did it once before, put the stick.
I did that one for him. I tell you,
How long before this last Sunday was that?
a while. Normally I was spanking.
Mauricio would then pin the blame on his wife for abusing not only Isaiah, but also their two daughters. He stated that Kathy did not have the same problems with the two girls as she did with Isaiah. And Mauricio tried to say that he would often try to stop his wife from hurting the kids when he was around. He additionally told investigators that he did not believe that Kathy cared about him or their children, and he felt like he had betrayed his son.
The reason why she's not saying anything, because she doesn't want to implement herself. Does that make sense? Because she knows she's equally guilty.
Another thing that Mauricio would say during this interview was, "When my son died, a part of me died forever." Ultimately, both Kathy and Mauricio were arrested and charged with capital homicide, first-degree battery, and assault. The thing is, Child Protective Services had long been involved with the family, and they had investigated multiple reports of abuse of Mauricio and Kathy's children, even prior to Isaiah's birth. According to Mauricio's oldest daughter, Isaiah Torres, her father was her and her brother's living nightmare for a long time. When their own mother had divorced Mauricio prior to him meeting Kathy, he had lost contact with his children completely and had his parental rights taken away. His daughter Erica thought that things were done as far as him hurting children. But when she learned that he had gone on to have more kids, she called up her brother, Isaiah Torres Jr., and told him that she was terrified what could happen to their father's new children. Then in 2004, one of Kathy's daughters from her previous relationship accused Mauricio of raping her. It had been reported by the girl's aunt, but Mauricio denied touching the 4-year-old inappropriately. And the case would be closed due to lack of physical evidence and an incomplete account by the victim, who was only 4. Mauricio would then be questioned by Jonesboro police just months after this, in regards to more allegations made by Kathy's then 4-year-old daughter, the same one. And even though Child Services had records that this little girl and her siblings had previously been put into foster care due to allegations of physical abuse, The agency yet again determined that these claims were unsubstantiated. The thing is, this 4-year-old had told investigators that her stepfather, Mauricio, had instructed her not to tell anyone, and she never even told her own mother. When Mauricio had been questioned about these allegations, he claimed that the girl's biological father was just attacking him in an attempt to gain custody. Kathy would agree with Mauricio, saying that these indeed were just her ex's intentions. And again, in August of 2007, another report was filed with Child Services due to allegations of abuse, but would also be closed without any charges brought against Mauricio. Now at school, Isaiah had been a very happy boy who was ready to learn, but as he grew older, his demeanor started to change and he became more withdrawn. He also started to get more angry and combative towards both his teachers and peers. His teachers additionally noticed that Isaiah was stealing food from other students and rummaging through the trash in an attempt to find food. His teachers at the Ambassadors of Christ Academy, where the boy was enrolled in kindergarten, soon began noticing that Isaiah would come to school with bruises and cuts on his body, and these injuries never seemed to heal. As such, the teachers began taking notes and reporting their concerns to the Arkansas Department of Human Services. But it seems like nothing was done in regards to these concerns, as they were marked as unsubstantiated yet again. Then following these reports, Isaiah and his sisters were pulled from school and homeschooled the following year. Now, even though all the children in the home were being mistreated, Isaiah was treated much worse than the others. While the boy's siblings would be fed home-cooked meals or meals from restaurants, he was forced to eat rice and beans or peanut butter sandwiches. Isaiah also regularly had his birthday ignored, and his parents would instead only celebrate his twin sister, giving her affection and presents. Additionally, Isaiah never received Christmas presents and was instead given coal. As time went on, things only got worse for the boy, and Mauricio would make Isaiah drink his urine and eat his feces. The little boy was not allowed to take anything but cold showers. He was beaten with a cable, shoes, sticks, and a fist, and was often forced to sleep in a dog cage. Sometimes Mauricio would take a pair of underwear, dunk them into a bucket of his piss, then force Isaiah to wear them around the house on his head. One time, Mauricio even pulled the boy's teeth out using pliers and poured bleach on his body. Isaiah's older sisters would be forced to hit the boy with a stick, as well as monitor Isaiah on occasion to make sure that he was not escaping from his cage enclosure at night or stealing any food. One time, Isaiah was even forced to stay inside a trash bin for about a month. Kathy would end up admitting to her son's capital murder in March of 2017. She took a plea deal which saw that the death penalty was removed from the table as a possible punishment. Yet she still maintained that she had not caused any of his injuries. Kathy would be sentenced to life in prison. When it was Mauricio's turn to go to trial, his defense tried to put the entire blame on Kathy. But it was obvious that the father had something to do with the death and abuse of his son Isaiah. During the trial, many witnesses would be called to the stand, including Mauricio's family, who testified that Mauricio's mother had never been in his life, and his father, Isaiah Torres, had punished Mauricio as a child by making him engage in rigorous physical activity, and he often overdid it. Mauricio would also be struck with a belt if he slowed down, and he was called derogatory names by his father. Then, many of Mauricio's adult children and stepchildren would take the stand to describe the horror that their lives had been when they lived with Mauricio. All of them that testified would accuse Mauricio of physically abusing them. He hit them, kicked them, threw them around, and would often yank and drag them by their ears. Mauricio's son, Isaiah Torres Jr., testified that one time when he couldn't get his shoes on fast enough, his father had kicked him so hard that he had vomited from it, then was forced to eat the vomit. He also claimed that his father would lock him and his brother into a room and force them to fight each other. Now, almost all of Mauricio's children also claimed that he had made them perform sexual acts on him and each other. Some of the witnesses told the jury that they had even been raped with objects. It seemed like Mauricio hurting his children was a very regular thing in the household. The adult children also told the jury that Mauricio was the dominant parent in the relationship, even though he had tried to make it seem like quite the opposite during his interrogation with police. At the end of the trial, Mauricio Torres would be convicted for the abuse and death of his son Isaiah, and in November of 2016, he was sentenced to death. However, in 2019, this was overturned due to a sentencing technicality. The Arkansas Supreme Court stated that the SA of Isaiah could not be used as a basis for seeking a capital homicide conviction. But then in March of 2020, Mauricio was again convicted on his charges. However, this was declared as a mistrial after Mauricio's stepson jumped out of the witness stand and tried to attack him during his sentencing. Mauricio again returned to court in February of 2023, and he would beg the jury not to have him killed. He was then convicted a third time and sentenced to life behind bars without the possibility of parole. A woman named Amy Gorley, who has no connection to Isaiah or his family, but sat in on Mauricio's trials, established the Isaiah Torres Memorial Scholarship Fund in his memory. This fund financially helps students who are enrolled in the Child Advocacy Studies program at Northwest Arkansas Community College. Isaiah's funeral was held shortly after his death at the Emerson Funeral Home in Jonesboro, Arkansas. Well, thank you for listening to Isaiah's story today. His so-called parents are absolutely vile human beings, and it's impossible to comprehend how they ever thought any of the punishments that they issued towards Isaiah were at all acceptable. Hopefully, the other inmates, where both Mauricio and Kathy are being held, know exactly what these monsters did to Isaiah and his siblings, and never let either of them have another moment of peace in their life. So if you like true crime and you want to hear it from me, then don't forget to hit that subscribe button below and turn on those notifications too, so you'll know when I upload a new video, which is at least 3 times every single week. Thanks for watching A Wicked World today. Until next time, take care. Bye. Thank you to all the patrons of A Wicked World. Now, there's even more of A Wicked World on Patreon, so check it out on patreon.com/awickedworld, or use the Patreon app. You'll have access to exclusive videos each month and more. Any support truly helps to make sure the victims are never forgotten, and to highlight the shortcomings of society associated with each case. Do you have a suggestion for a story you'd like to see me cover? If so, send me an email to awickedworldtruecrime@gmail.com.